All right, welcome to the 5 a.m. grind. Harris, what's up, man?
Nothing much. What's up with you?
It's good, man. It's good. How's everything?
I can't complain, man.
Yeah?
Yeah. How's everything with you?
Yeah, it's not bad. Did you vote?
No, I haven't voted.
You haven't
yet.
voted?
No.
Did you see the inflation number this morning?
No. Yeah.
It's like,
Well, this morning was it?
oh,
what
whatever,
was it?
yesterday.
Yeah. It was over 4.
Yeah, over 4.
Highest since 2003.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
It's not a
or-
surprise. It's not. No, I don't think it's temporary. But
Really?
yeah, I don't think it's a surprise either.
So you think they're going to raise rates?
I think I don't know. I don't think they're gonna raise rates anytime soon. We're going through a bit of an issue where it's gonna be either you're gonna have inflation,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And if you have inflation, everybody's not happy. Or if you raise rates,
Yeah.
then you just have a lot of businesses collapse because with inflation, at least they're trying to manage to run their business. Maybe not as good as it would have been before.
Yep.
But as you raise rates, those businesses are going to collapse, and then you have higher unemployment.
Yeah.
So either they have to choose between unemployment or inflation. And I think the choice would be inflation.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. We'll
I
see.
don't know. What do you think?
I have no idea. We'll see. We'll see. I still think maybe I'm a little complacent, but I do believe the Fed is right. It might be just temporary until things normalize. I don't know. I really don't know, though. I really don't know. It's why I'm not an economist.
Okay, no, but here's the thing, though. Okay, so this is what I know we got our own topic,
Yeah.
but quickly,
No, go
okay?
ahead. Yeah, no, this is always good.
So what the Fed claims is that there was suppressed demand during the pandemic,
Yeah.
right? And then as a result of it, now you've got all this excess demand, right? And that's what's pushing up the prices. When did the prices drop for anything? They didn't. In order for prices to go up, prices had to come down. In order for it to come down, you had to see a deflationary period, right? Which would be considered as a recession if the GDP contracted more than 2 quarters. Did it happen? It didn't. So the prices just been going up and up and up, and you're giving them different reasons now.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I feel. I also feel that, you know what, if you've printed half of your currency in the last 12 months, it's going to do something.
It's going to do something eventually.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Okay. So, topic for today's discussion. Wanted to talk about a term that's used in business quite a bit, and that is corporate culture. Gets talked about a lot, but I don't think even me as a person that's worked for as long as I have, sometimes corporate culture is like this fuzzy term that nobody knows what it exactly means. So wanted to take a dive into what corporate culture actually is, and wanted to cover the following 4 questions. So number 1, what does corporate culture actually mean? So we'll ask each other that question. Number 2, when does corporate culture become important in an organization? Number 3, does corporate culture change over time? And number 4, which organization do you think has a great corporate culture? Okay. So number 1, what does corporate culture mean to you when you hear that term?
When I hear it, at least, it's more organizational behavior, another term for that.
But what does that mean? What does that mean? I was going to say, it's the course you took in business school, but what does it mean?
Yeah, more like, I guess, the atmosphere in an organization, in how people conduct their work and how they interact with one another. What would you say is the...
Yeah, I think that's it. It's I have a textbook definition here. It's basically corporate culture guides how the employees of a company act, feel, and think. It is the social environment of an organization. It symbolizes the unique personality of a company and expresses the core values, ethics, and behaviors and beliefs of an organization. So I'd say that's what it is. But sometimes when I read this definition, and I think about giant companies, like let's say you have BMO, you have TD. I don't know. Have you banked at different banks in Canada?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Do you notice a difference between one and the other?
Huge
Really?
I'll say one thing. Okay.
Yeah.
With real estate, you actually end up banking a lot with all the banks, all the big banks, because
Yeah.
within real estate, again, for those of you guys tuning in now, I am a real estate lawyer, so we work with a lot of buying, selling, refinancing of homes. That means that we're working with mortgages, which means that we're working with banks several different ways. Firstly, for example, as a lender, if our client wants to get money. Secondly, if the client, like if you're discharging a mortgage and you're paying off a client's mortgage. So we deal with it in very different ways. Now, I'm not going to single out banks or anything, okay? So I'm not going to name names, but I will say certain banks will give more power and autonomy to the people at the front lines. By front lines, mean I could call somebody or I could go into a branch and they're given the confidence to make the decisions.
Yeah.
Whereas others are constantly afraid and they have to go speak to somebody else who's in a different office and you're always waiting for a decision to be made.
That's interesting. Okay, so empowering the front lines versus not doing that.
And then so when you're empowering the front lines, those individuals just they not only will be able to help you better, they understand the conversation they're having. You know what I mean? They understand what you're doing, what your role in a transaction may be. They understand what kind of transaction or what kind of banking you're requiring. And all of that they understand because they see it, because they've made decisions in and around it. And if they haven't, somebody next to them has. And so they're very comfortable. Whereas those where the decision making has been delegated to another office somewhere else, they're constantly panicking. They're constantly in a state of like, oh my God, like, can I do this? What if I mess up? Oh, and so.
Oh, wow.
So I'm talking from a banking perspective. So I don't know. I think maybe you're talking from a holistic, maybe even where your end is where like equity analysis and all that stuff, investment banking. I don't know any experience there. I don't have any experience there, but from my experience, there's a huge difference.
That's interesting. It's interesting how you've actually seen that. Because what I was going to say is that sometimes when you work at these companies internally, you don't really notice the difference. I guess sometimes it depends on which department you're in.
Yeah.
And it's hard, I guess, as an employee to compare cultures because you're in the company.
Yeah.
You're used to what that company does. And when somebody asks you, what's the culture here? It's hard for you to answer. It's like, I do my job this way.
Yeah. I mean,
you don't really know.
Even with banks, in terms of underwriting mortgages and stuff, you could see a huge difference, huge difference.
Yeah.
Between certain lenders versus other lenders.
Yeah, interesting. I have noticed though, like throughout my career, so I worked at a big bank, BMO, and then at Apple. I've noticed the difference in corporate culture there.
Yeah.
Going from like a bank to a tech company, I've noticed the difference.
What was the biggest kind of?
The biggest difference was just the level of autonomy they give you at a tech company is way more. The expectations at a tech company are way more as well. It's much more fast moving. Would I say that that's, like, did Apple actually say that that's what they exactly do? They move faster, they give you autonomy. I don't know if they said that explicitly, but I did notice that there is a clear difference in the way that a bank operates. It's very bureaucratic and very linear. And in the way a tech company operates, it's a bit more dynamic and different. It's not the same as a bank, obviously, I guess.
So even with your banking experience, you would say that it was still bureaucratic?
It was still bureaucratic, yeah. Even though I worked in a pretty, I guess you could say, fast-paced area, in capital markets.
Yeah, I would, I don't know. I'm a little surprised because where you're working, I would assume you need to be independent, critical thinking, all of that.
There is that, but when you're making decisions, it still requires you to go through a chain of command. The chain of command responds pretty quickly, but there is some of that required. At Apple, I would say there is that as well, but I don't know. There is a bit more autonomy given to employees because you can recommend something and you will be listened to, as opposed to at a bank where you can recommend something, but ultimately it's really not you influencing the decision. Someone else is influencing that decision. Slight difference, but I don't know, maybe noteworthy. Wanted to move to the second question. When do you think corporate culture becomes important? For example, let's go into your company. You and your brother, co-founders of your law firm. What are you guys doing? Do you guys think about culture? Are you very deliberate about this? When does that become important for you?
I think that, frankly speaking, we had taken it for granted in the beginning because we're like, oh, we're brothers, we're starting something. But then when we kind of really got into some serious decision making, we realized we needed to, even if we're family, we got to create boundaries. We got to create a certain type of culture, even if it's between the two of us, to ensure that we are operating in a certain way. Okay. And then it just becomes more important when you have like more people, right? So now with our entire team, and it's something that I kind of try to balance a lot. So, and this is why I would kind of go back to basically what influences, for example, corporate culture between Apple and BMO.
Yeah.
Our industry is heavily regulated. Now, I'd love to give autonomy to my guys, right?
Yeah.
However, within the legal industry, the lawyer's always tied. You're always like, in a sense, in a way, personally liable, right? Even though there's limited liability there, but you're personally named in any lawsuit. It's not like you have that shield or corporate shield. So in that sense, there is more on the line, and the decisions, the margin for error is relatively lower. The learning curve in a lot of the areas is relatively lower. So for that reason, I have to be very involved, and it is a bit more bureaucratic. Yeah. Now, there's other areas in our business that there's not as much on the line. So if somebody is looking at my website, right, I'm going to give complete autonomy. What do you think is wrong with it? How are we going to optimize this? How are we going to get more conversions in? Right? How do we make this our apps that we're building out? Yes, there's requirements that we give them, or my operations guys will give my tech side requirements, but at the same time, from the tech side, what tech stack they use, what the user experience is, that is what they're going to be figuring out. There's autonomy there, right? And in that sense, there's a lot of testing and learning. So there are certain areas where we can't like move. You know what I mean? We're heavily regulated to the point where our trust accounts can be audited by Law Society at any point without any reason, and we have to account for every single penny and how. And it's not even just accounting for it. It's how we manage the money. Everything has to be regulated, and how we communicate to our clients. Everything is regulated. So for that reason, I have to be on top of it.
Yeah, interesting. So would you say, just in the importance of corporate culture, then, would you say like it's important day one and then it stays, it's always important?
It's always important.
Always important.
If you have more than one employee, it's very important.
More than one employee. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. How would you say your law firm is different than other ones in terms of just culture? Is culture something you use to differentiate your firm from other ones?
I would say we're a bit more open-minded. I think that with most firms, because the regulatory environment is so stringent, that spills over into all of their other departments, right? But with us, we know where we have to have a tight grip. Everything else, everybody can explore, test, and learn.
Yeah. It's like nurturing creativity, but staying within the regulations and the laws that you have to respect. Yeah.
And actually, that's my opinion, so I'm not saying law firms are definitely like that. Just a legal disclaimer here. That's completely my opinion, okay? So I'm not making any kind of representations on any other law firm's behalf.
Got it.
But what would you say is your biggest difference as an accounting firm versus any other accounting firm?
Well, I just started, so I'd say, but
I think you're doing a lot of things very differently.
But I would say that I have noticed that customer service, for example, is a huge issue for accounting firms. And you know what? It's not a huge secret, but whatever. I do think that accounting firms always tell the public and their clients that we do things accurately, we'll file on time, et cetera. There's always this thing that accountants do. They're like, we will file your tax returns accurately and do it properly and save you money. Okay? These are the three most common messages. I think the message that is sometimes lost is just good customer service, taking care of your customers' problems is missed.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, as a professional law firm, as an accountant, that's your first reason to exist. You're there to solve your clients' problems, tax and accounting problems and legal problems. And then you can say, yes, we do things accurately, blah, blah, blah. The accurate stuff, I don't think that's something you can sell yourself on, because it's assumed that you do this accurately. You're a professional, for God's sakes. Otherwise, like, why am I coming to
No,
you?
I'll tell you what my biggest qualm with accounting firms is, which I think you're doing, like, pretty on point, right? Well, at least I think so. No, you know better,
Okay.
Is that, and it's exactly what you said, right? Like, accounting firms, first of all, I don't know if they do anything accurate, but, like, whatever. Like, most, okay, it depends on, no, okay, these aren't representations you're making. This is something I'm making, okay?
Yeah.
So from what my experience, at least, going in and, like, first of all, bookkeeping should not be a big issue, even though a lot of firms don't do that correctly. Okay.
Yeah.
Be very frank with you, they don't. Bookkeeping should be accurate, right? But I guess because it's a competitive market, margins are going down, and that's no excuse. But I could see how people try to cut corners, and then so now you've got bookkeeping that's an issue. So your numbers may not be 100%, or you got filler numbers, whatever the heck is going on. I don't care, but whatever, right? So let's say your bookkeeping is what it should be, which is accurate, right? After that, for anybody to properly hire an accountant, the real kind of, I guess, reason you'd hire an accountant is that they should be essentially like tax planning for you and your organization and structuring your organization so that you have the right numbers, right? And that you could see the right numbers. If there's like certain reports that an accountant would know better, because a lot of people are going to be financially not as sophisticated, right?
Yeah.
So put the right numbers in front of you and then be able to give you the guidance of you're growing, you need to start thinking about these things. So it's forward guidance. It's not about past and, okay, well, you know what, you had, you went to Tim Hortons and got a coffee for $1.97. You see it's on the trust ledger right here. Like, that's not the job of an accountant, right? And that's what I feel like it has boiled down to.
It has, yeah.
So whereas like accountants, I don't feel like, and again, this comes from, I guess, the different types of accountants, right? When you are a small business and you're paying $500, $1,000, $2,000 a month for your accounting, there's only so much that can be had, and you're gonna attract a certain type of quality in the accountants, right? You're not gonna go hire the KPMG and PwCs of the world, right? So, and I'm not saying they're doing it any better, but at the same time, I feel like at least with what you're doing, at least you're giving people forward guidance, and you know when these guys are coming in, this is where the business is going. You know what I mean?
Correct.
And then you could say like, okay, well, you know what? Think about this or think about that, or you at least you know that this business is here. This guy may not know that he's gonna need this tomorrow, but when he does, you'll have it in the back of your mind, and you can let him know. You know what I mean?
Correct.
So that's where like professional, like hiring a professional really matters. We've gone completely off topic.
Yeah, no. Hey, it's good. Hey, no, it's fine. I like this discussion. It's good. It's exactly what I wanted to cover. I guess, would you say, so moving on to question number 3, does corporate culture change over time? As an organization grows bigger and matures, do you think it changes?
If you've got it right the first time around,
yeah,
I don't think so.
Like the core values stay the same, you'd say?
Yeah. Maybe if you got something wrong, then, like, for example, I'll give you my thing.
Yeah.
What I want in my organization is a bit of openness.
Yep.
So I'm like, some people are like, yo, no rules, I don't care about rules, whatever, right? I just want like whatever. And other people are like, oh my God, like we only need rules. And my thing is you got to find a good balance. You need some kind of structure. It's like language, right? You need grammar.
Yeah.
Right? You need words. They mean something, right? So that's your structure right there. But then how you bring it together and the meanings you derive by the sentences you weave together, right? Some people are very good at it. Some people are horrible at it, right? So it's the same thing with corporate culture. It's like you need the right balance of structure, right? Where it's like you're getting the proper guidance so people are learning, but you also have the openness to make decisions, to to make mistakes, to learn from them and grow. So that's kind of my goal. And that's going to like kind of at least appearance wise change, but the goal is going to stay the same. Does that make sense?
I like that. The goal, the objective, and the core values stay the same, but how you implement them can vary and sort of change over time as an organization gets bigger. I like that. I mean, sometimes it's always important to, I guess, have this a self-assessment of your organization to be able to see whether or not you're still you still have those values and that core belief, you know, in it's pervasive in your organization and everybody follows the same agenda. Everybody's on the same page. I feel like sometimes you have to do a bit of an audit about your corporate culture to make sure it's good. Because sometimes, I guess, a culture is really made by its people, right? And it requires a leader to communicate, to make sure that that's the culture an organization follows. But people can change it because ultimately, like, the culture is made up of people. Yeah. So sometimes I feel like you need to do an audit to be able to see whether or not, you know, people are getting lazy, they're doing things a bit differently than what you had envisioned for the organization. I feel like that's key. I go back to even some situations, like just through my head, about some pretty big corporate turnarounds. Like one of them that comes to mind just because I listened to the podcast was like Sprint, the carrier in the US. Used to be a carrier that used to really suck. A CEO came, actually changed the culture. Now it, you know, and finally sold Sprint to T-Mobile. But can you think of other organization that did this like nice 180 because they were sucking and then they improved themselves?
I would say the Bay. I think that if you go back, I think 2004, I think back then Sears was good. They were on top of their game.
Yeah.
But the Bay wasn't, they were kind of nowhere. They had all these other random brands, and then I think they got bought out by a private equity fund, and then they really changed everything around. And Bay went from like a whatever type of department store to something that, you know, like I like walking to a Bay now. Before it was depressing. So when they did a turnaround and like you could tell like just the employees and everybody walking into a Bay, it feels very, very different. The culture, I would say, in terms of even the service, right? Because that's what it kind of boils down to. It's very different from what it was in 2004 and before that.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're right. The Bay used to suck. They went higher end when they got brought over by that private equity firm. I think his name is Richard Baker. He does a lot of these turnarounds. They bought Saks, right? They really went high end. I think I used to know somebody who worked there, and then they sucked again after.
They did?
After they did that, Because, they were sucking. They actually, like, the Bay went private. I think it went private, it went public. It was trying to go public. It went private again. It was it was a bit of a mess. But you're right. They did make a change briefly there, and it worked.
Yeah.
It seemed to have worked, which is quite interesting. Other corporate culture changes, like in terms of your firm, when you and your brother were running it, I would imagine, did the culture change when you started hiring people, or was it more of the same? It was more of like, take whatever is working and then communicate it to your employees. How did that change?
I would say as we grew, we try to keep it the same. We didn't want it too bureaucratic. There are checks and balances, but we want a learning environment where people are understanding things and figuring out things and constantly kind of growing themselves too. I wouldn't want somebody who's kind of, you know, taking template emails and because they're fed to them and sending it out to my clients and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And I understand why law firms could be kind of, in a way, incentivized to do that because they're scared the person might say something wrong. But I want them to learn as well. So, and we have frequent conversations. So if an employee comes into my office and says, hey, I don't really understand something, I will take the time to explain it so that they get a good understanding. And when they understand what the limits and everything are, they're better able to play. It's like understanding the rules of the game. The better you understand them, the better you're of a player you are as you more practice more and you kind of really work on yourself. So the same thing with the culture. I want them to be all-stars. Like I'm also very I would say picky in the sense that I don't like just people being competent around me. They have to be moving towards a higher level of everything, of understanding, of language, of expression, of like consumption, of everything has to be moving towards a very high level.
Got it. Got it. Okay, cool. And I guess for the last question in this segment, what I wanted to cover is which organization do you think has a great corporate culture? Again, I'll ask you because you actually run a law firm that has employees. But what's like a really good corporate culture? What do you think is good? Like maybe is there a company that you try to model after? Is there something that you think an organization should have that is admirable?
So I can't really. Here's the other thing. Okay,
Yeah.
so with corporate culture, I could say, hey, Apple has great corporate culture, but I don't really know what kind of culture it has. I only know what it's telling me that they have.
Correct.
Right?
No, agreed. It's a
Okay.
hard
Yeah.
hard thing to know from the
So,
outside looking in.
Yeah, so they could say they're great, but what does great mean? And I'm going to fill it in with what I like or whatever. So I don't necessarily compare or aim towards a culture because I don't know the cultures that exist. Even if you say, like, for example, Amazon, oh, yeah, he's like, some people say Jeff Bezos gives away a lot of, like, puts away a lot of resources for employees. Other people say you can't go to the washroom if you're working for him. So it really depends on who you talk to, right? So, I mean, the type of things that, like the culture that I want to aim for is people taking ownership of what they do.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're not really coming in and just like, oh, well, if it doesn't happen, doesn't happen. This is just a job. I want them to take ownership that this is my thing. The other thing is that I am keenly aware of, and I kind of struggle with this every day, is people work, but work is part of your life. You know what I mean? And you're working 9 to 5. Sometimes you need more. You spend more hours. Sometimes you need to spend less hours. And it's really about like people are giving me a decent chunk of their lives. And so I want to make sure that I owe them not just salary, but I feel like I owe them some kind of growth as well. So they're not just drones coming in, that they have more fulfillment. Fulfillment is not just monetary, it's intellectual, there's whatever it is. So I feel like that needs to be given because that is what will make them consider the company just an extension of their household. And I don't want it to be work and then home. I want them to kind of understand that, okay, company does well, you do well, right? And if you yourself are doing well and understanding things, then the company does well.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. As you were saying all of this, I was just thinking about corporate culture in general. And I think, yeah, it's essentially the reason why people come to work. Like that is really what corporate culture is. And even for me, just asking myself that question in terms of what corporate culture I admire, it's hard for you as an outsider to look at organizations and say, this has a good corporate culture, etc. I mean, sometimes you deduce whether or not someone has a good corporate culture by looking at the results and how successful that company is and then say that, okay, maybe this company has a good corporate culture. But I think if I look back throughout my career, one of the things I've noticed is that when organizations get really big, it's tough. I don't know what it is. It's tough to just have a good culture from time to time and have that culture that, at least I think is quite good in the sense that people in the organization have ownership. They drive towards a mission that the organization really cares about. They're autonomous. They're like people have autonomy to sort of, drive results. They take risks, learn from their failures, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because once an organization gets really big, even that culture of risk taking, they may say, yeah, we're, at the forefront of whatever innovation, blah, blah. But sometimes that just goes away because there's so many management layers and there's so many people you got to please and so many processes that you kind of lose that as you get bigger. I don't know. It's kind of strange. It's hard to sort of keep that when you grow really big.
Yeah. I mean, I think that a good sign that you're doing well for your employees is that you have decent turnover and there's good turnover, there's bad turnover.
Yeah.
Bad turnover is I hate to work here. I'm going to go work anywhere or
Yeah.
I'd rather starve to death than work here.
Mm-hmm.
Good turnover is, hey, I'm going to move on to bigger and better things. I learned a lot. It was really good, and now I'm moving on, whether it's a different industry, whether they want to start their own thing, but they got their fulfillment and they can move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they also in turn have set the stage for people that may have came before or after them to do the same thing.
Yeah. And I feel like in the same vein as well, like sometimes a lot of people measure success in the organization, like how much revenue it makes, how customer success scores. And I love that. I feel like, yes, you should definitely monitor those things, revenue, customer success. But you should also monitor things like that don't bring immediate results, like things like how many risks did we take, how many projects did we do that failed that we learned something out of. You know, things that aren't necessarily correlated to revenue and customer success, but still drive the organization forward and encourage this attitude and I don't know, outlook on like being able to try new things, you know, pushing the organization forward as well.
I think what you're talking about, there is a correlation to success, but it's not immediate.
Yes.
And it's not instant gratification, right? And so a lot of companies simply move towards what's going to be profitable within the next quarter.
Yeah.
And when you're experimenting, you're going to have 10 experiments and maybe 2 or 3 are going to be profitable, but they're going to take 6 quarters to become profitable, right?
Exactly.
And so that's what, like, as the company gets too big, it becomes risk averse because everybody's trying to, you know, they don't want anyone to have a reason to fire them. And that's why they're looking at, okay, small wins, keep it safe, and keep playing.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. So, all right. So, any takeaways just on corporate culture in terms from your perspective?
No, I think
covered it.
I think it's extremely important, and it's I think it's a huge part of a company's success. And I think as senior management, it should take up a lot of your time to figure out what your culture is.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. Like, it's management's number one job and the CEO's number one job to institute culture. It's basically like the soul of an organization. It's why employees come to work. And, you know, I think managers and CEOs and executives should be asking themselves this question more, because a lot of people assume, everybody has a reason to come to work. Yeah, we're driving towards this revenue, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we're doing this. It's awesome. It's very clear.
Paying them.
Yeah, we're paying them, and that's why they're coming. But sometimes a CEO's job is to communicate that over and over again so their employees know exactly why they come, what's the mission, where are they driving towards. I think that's always important. It's like, you know, that conductor yelling. Not yelling, but basically directing his crew. Like, that's essentially what a CEO does. And you communicate that through your company's culture.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, we'll leave it there. We'll see you guys in the next episode.
Take care, guys.
Take care.